So under object state, what QTP tries to do is, first let us simulate what is object state before we go to how to solve it using a recovery manager. Is my voice clear to you all? Yeah. Most of them says it is clear. What about the person who has raised the concern? Is it clear to them? Fine. I hope it is resolved. Now, we start with object state now. Object state, first simulate what is object state, how QTP manages that object state through recovery. So I'm creating the application. So I'm just opening the application. I'm going to record an event where I want to trigger object state recovery. I'm going to open order. First is activate flight reservation, open order. Under open order, I am going to check this order number and give the order number here, say 152. As I open the order number, I need to edit with some value. So I am editing say with 3, updating this order. This is my scenario. For this scenario, I want to apply object state. First trigger, understand what object state is. In this application that we have recorded, I am going to comment this selection of order number checkbox. I am commenting now selection of object order number checkbox. Once if I uncheck, that means by default it is an unchecked condition. What will happen to this edit box? This edit box is in disable mode if I don't select the order number. Under such situation, how he now set the new value? He cannot set the new value. Since he cannot set the new value, he is going to fail, saying that edit box is disabled. We are going to see that. So before I run, I just change for the next update. I am changing the value, otherwise script will fail. So I am changing the value. Now run the script. Now I am simulating. Anyway, it is going to fail at line number 4. What I am trying to do is, once I click on open order, after open the order, I am supposed to check the checkbox, but it is not checked. So he is now trying to update directly the edit box with number, but he is not allowed to edit. Since he is not allowed to edit, he is going to fail. Right? So now he has failed. You can see that object is disabled, and where which object is disabled, WinEdit set 152 has failed. I want to apply object state recovery here. The reason for object state is, it is not on this pop-up window. It is this particular object order number, where the property of this order number checkbox is different. Again, I am applying this for this checkbox, not for this edit box, even though the failure is on the edit box. Because the edit box is enabled only because of the checkbox is checked. If checkbox is not checked, I cannot enable the edit box, and I don't have a control to set that property, whereas I have a control to set order number. The object for which you want to set the property needs to be selected, and this property value changing is what object state is all about. I am trying to change the object state with the new property value. So let us move on to recovery. How I manage this in the recovery. Again I am repeating, recovery is meant for you know what event can affect, but you may not know when it will affect. In my case, I am simulating, I know when it will affect, but I am simulating here. In reality, you don't know when it will happen, whether it is going to happen in the first line, third line, fifth line, you are not sure, or second script, we are not sure. So resources, recovery scenario manager. In last session, we have already created a recovery. I can open up that recovery and then put that inside that recovery. I can add multiple scenarios. I'll do for this adding it onto the same scenario. Already there is a QRS file. In that QRS file, I am adding one more pop-up object state scenario. So click on new scenario. I select new scenario. I'll get into recovery scenario wizard. Next, trigger event. I choose object state as my trigger event. In this case, we are setting the property value of an object in your application match specified value. So I am trying to trigger object state. It gets triggered when it matches to the specified value. I am in trigger event now. First, show the hand to click on the object whose properties you want to specify. This is where I said I am going to specify the checkbox object, not the edit box object. So I click on hand, place my hand onto the checkbox. I am placing my hand onto the checkbox. Object selection window. Here win checkbox order number is the item. Once you confirm this, click OK. Now you got into which object the trigger event has to happen. Now we have selected the object for which property I need to trigger this event. I need to specify now. Next button will take me there. It will ask me to add or remove the properties for that object based on which you want to trigger. In my case, I want to trigger only if checked is off. Checked is a property. If checked is off, I want to trigger the recovery. And also I want to set this checked property off to on. It is like a set TO property. So I am checking this property off to on is what I am trying to do. I say next. Now I am into recovery event. Okay, you identified the trigger. What you want QTP to do in case if the object is found. I say next. In this case, I want to do keyboard or mouse operations. I cannot do. As I said in my previous session, keyboard or mouse movements are meant for buttons. If I go to next, you can see that it is all click event. In our case, it is not click event, it is set event. I need to set on. You can see to the right, set on, that commented line number 3 behind my script. It is set event, not click event. Close application process is too much. Restart Microsoft Windows is also too much. So I left with an option called functional call. So functional call, when we use, it allows us to customize that library in the way we want. For getting into functional, you need to have a library. So in our case, we have library, we have created library, But unfortunately that library is meant for functions, whereas this is to be used for objects. To use it for objects, I create one more library. It is for recovery. Recovery, I need to use different library so that this library is maintained by QTP. Our library, what we seen in yesterday's functional library class, it is for different purpose. Now, opening a library is very simple. Go to a notepad, just save the file. That's all. Your library is created now. I put it under our project folder, C drive. Under C drive, online QTP is our online class, is our actual project. Under this project, I now say recovery library, or under library I keep it as a different file. Under library I can keep it as a different file as well. Recovery as one folder. Under this folder I want to save my library. I put here recovery. In case you don't want .txt as an extension, you can put .qfl, put it in entire thing in quotes, because save as type I want to ignore. Otherwise you can choose all files and give whatever the extension you want to give. I say recovery qfl. Now library is created but it is empty. I close this. Now I use functional library. I map now this library to recovery. Inside recovery I choose this QFL now. He can choose QFL VBS.txt. He can choose any of these file types. Now I saved it as .qfl. So I am choosing under recovery folder this file. Inside this file nothing is there. Inside this file now you can see QTP defines the function. He defines the function recovery function 1, and this object is what you need to work with, because this is the object referred by recovery function, and this object I now use it object dot. My job is I need to set on. This is my method on that object. Here this functional library is managed by QTP himself. Recovery scenario manages that function. It will have collection of functions. You can create in this library as many functions as you want. In this case the object is nothing but a reference, and this object I am going to set on. Please note here in QTP this functional library doesn't have a repository, so object is handled because this is already referred in our repository. Say next, add another recovery scenario. So I am now selecting this functional call. I select next. So what do you want? My post recovery event. What I want to do? I want to edit that order number again. So I say repeat current step and continue. Next. Scenario name, I'll say obj state. This is my scenario name. I'm going to use add scenario to the current test, finish. I say close. Save the file. Yes, it will go now to QRS file, flight reservation. Inside that QRS now we'll have two scenarios, one for pop-up, another for object state. I have changed it. I go to file settings. Under this file settings you can now see under recovery object state is selected, it is not selecting now pop-up because we have not added as a default. If I want to add pop-up, I can add the same through plus symbol. Are you able to see? Using plus symbol, choosing the recovery file. I choose the recovery file now. Online class recovery. Under this recovery, I can now add or delete whichever you want to do. In this case, I want to add pop-up. I can add that scenario as well. So pop-up is also added, object state is also added. To remove it, you can remove it. So for which recovery you want to give priority, I can use up and down. So first you give priority to pop-up, second you go and check for object state. First you want to do object state, you can move that again. This is priority in which the pop-up or recovery to be handled. This indicates clearly the more the recovery you have, QTP will go slow. That is why we always trigger it with on error. I am going to say apply. I have done now. I am click on OK. Now recovery is set. This recovery will now manage that pop-up window. So let us see how it manages. I am going to run the script. I click on run. Executing the script now. So he now opens up open order. He tries to edit the order number. Here order number he could not edit. Before he sends the failure, he sees that for this object order number unchecked checkbox in open order dialog, he sees the pop-up recovery, object state recovery, and that object state recovery puts the order number there. And now he is able to proceed, enter the order number and then continue updating this order number. For this updation only I change that value of tickets so that it doesn't fail. Update requires some change in the application. This is about object state. Now in case in the recovery that you see, you want to change it to every step. If you like to change, please note, I can change it here, but it is not sufficient because if it is every step, I need to even change my post-recovery event. I need to edit the recovery and change the post-recovery event. If I need to do that, I change to recovery every step, apply. If I run, now pop-up recovery will try to hit on the same button, but edit box will no longer exist. Because of that, he made file. I'll just run the script before I change so that you understand why it fails. Right? I run the script, but if this every step or any change you do, it generally work if you only restart that particular application because it is already now loaded. Pop-up is already loaded. At that time it is default set with on error. Now let us see. Now he's made the checkbox, handle the checkbox through pop-up recovery. So you want him to repeat the current step. So now he says win button click is disabled. This is line number 2. So line number 2 itself is failed. So I stop it. I rerun the script because it is on every step. I run because line number 2 is the one which triggered you are making him to execute line number 2 itself, because you have said repeat on the same step. Repeat the current step and continue. Line number 2 triggered the recovery. He managed the recovery, but unfortunately, since you said you repeat the current step and continue, he is trying to edit line number 2 itself. This is very important for you to understand. So post recovery is sensitive to the way you manage the recovery type. So I need to change this. I now go to resources. I open recovery scenario manager. I open that flight reservation QRS. In this, I now want to edit the object state. I click on edit button. In edit button, I want to change the post recovery event. Trigger event, I don't have any problem. I want to now change it to proceed next step. So now I change it, next, I finish, save this recovery. I saved it now. Right? Let us run now how it manages. When I save it, if it is reloaded by default, we don't have an issue. If it is not reloaded, we need to reload this particular test again. So I am going to run the script now. We have now modified our object state recovery. We made it as on error. So it is checked. Now you can see he is moved to line number 4 and 152 is typed. Now 4 is already updated. He may fail with this update. This update might send a failure because we have not changed any value in the current application. You can see that record not updated, no values set. Because of this error, now pop-up recovery is again trying to manage. I say now OK, clear. Now, if you notice now, what we have done is we have changed to on error, from on error to every step. When we do every step, by clicking this 2 itself, he sees that pop-up window with that recovery event. So he manages that recovery. So we tell him to move to the next line, line number 4. So that is what post recovery we have done. This is about object state recovery.